This next panel is going to talk about the important transitions in global mobility from the early stages of electric vehicles all the way to fleet electrification. We're going to go ahead and welcome this very esteemed panel and our moderator, Karina Ricks. Thank you.
You're next to me.
Yeah.
Great, yeah. Thank you. This is a great opportunity, and really want to thank Commotion for giving the opportunity to have this important discussion about the future of electric vehicles and how we really accelerate the zero-emission transition. We know that EVs are no longer really just for early adopters. They've turned mainstream in a number of places, but still we have a long ways to go. We need systems that can really keep up with that kind of electrical demand. We need easy and ubiquitous infrastructure to make it possible, and we need solutions that are affordable and equitable. We're going to talk with this great panel about some of the innovations that are on their way, smart policies, smart technologies, so that we can really accelerate the zero-emission transition, go to scale, both for passenger vehicles as well as for freight, for last-mile delivery, for the whole host of different use cases. So I want to introduce very briefly our panel, and then we'll get into a great discussion, I hope. So Meshal Almoshaogeh is the Associate Professor at Qassim University. He's the former Dean of the College of Engineering, where he's led a number of transformative initiatives and really elevated the performance of that institution. Bouba Casse is founder and CEO of GreenRide Africa, a sustainable mobility company based in Kigali, Rwanda. And they're really driving Africa's transition to electric transport through a fleet and a charging hub strategy. Tiya Gordon is COO and co-founder of It's Electric, an innovative EVSE provider who partners with cities to install low-profile Level 2 chargers on streets using existing building power. It's Electric is really aiming to make EV charging accessible for city dwellers and for disadvantaged communities. Umar Javed is the president and co-founder of WattEV. Umar has been a technology executive and an innovator in multiple global ventures. He's now working to accelerate zero-emission trucking in the US. And finally, we have Michael Spencer, CEO of Zeno. He and his team are electrifying light mobility and building distributed energy generation, storage, and charging infrastructure in emerging markets across the Africa and MENA regions. So by way of introduction, what I would like the panel to talk about is that the EV market is still a little bit nascent. While we talk about it, being mainstream now, we still are lagging a little bit in really catalyzing that transformation. So if you can just talk a little bit about what you're doing in your respective industries and your respective regions to really accelerate that transition, to promote the shift toward more sustainable, cleaner modes of mobility.
Thank you, Karina, for such nice introduction, and thanks the host Commotion here. I would go through a little bit some information about what Saudi government is doing right now based on Saudi Vision 2030 goals, transforming the transport for sustainability and sustainable and smart transportation, reducing the oil dependency and tackling the air pollution over there and reducing the emission, because we may all know that the mode of transportation, or the main mode of transportation here in Saudi Arabia, is the vehicles, or the normal vehicles based on the gas over there. So rapid urbanization happening in the Saudi, we can see how much the urbanization is happening and have been done a lot of work here. So that depending on the vehicles will be more. So the government initiate many initiatives to make sure they are reducing the dependency on the normal vehicle, and they kept it one of the KPI of Saudi Vision by 2030 that 30% of the vehicle should be shifted to electric vehicle by 2030. So in our studies, we have studies how we can promote and adopt the electric vehicle in Saudi Arabia. So we studied many parameters and many factors that affecting and influencing the adopting of electric vehicle, how we can make the consumer or the people who is using the vehicles in Saudi Arabia. So we investigated the purchase price, the long-term saving, the accessibility of charging station, the government incentives and regulations here in Saudi Arabia, and the technological advancement in Saudi Arabia. Also, we looked to the barriers. So we found that the purchase price and the long-term saving are the main and factors that affecting the adopting of electric vehicle in Saudi Arabia. So there are many initiatives have been launched. I will go over it on the other questions. Thank you, Karina, and I'll leave it for my colleague here.
Bouba, what can you tell us? What do you see as the real opportunity to scale this market and some of the barriers maybe that you've encountered?
Okay. Going back to Hashid, I think the biggest opportunity for the electrification, especially for me, is talking about Africa and Rwanda to be particular, is the accessibility. Because in Africa, mobility is still a high demand. Africa has 1.5 billion people. We have the youngest population in the world. By 2050, one of every 4 people in the world will be Africans. So we need to make sure that we create cities that are very connected. And the way to connect cities is to have access to clean mobility. So what we do for GreenRide Africa is to make sure that we build forward by accelerating the growth. We believe that in Africa we can leapfrog because we don't have to have the same things that happen in the Western world as far as wait until 20 years to transition to a full EV. So with GreenRide, our first operation on day 1, we went 100% electric. And that's what we're doing. And our mission is to electrify the whole taxi industry in Africa. And currently we are in Kigali with 50 vehicles in operation with a goal to scale across the region in Africa. And hopefully someday we can come also in Saudi and the Middle East.
And Tiya, what about in cities? How do we really make this happen in places where not very many people have a garage? They don't have a private place where they can do their charging. How are we going to make this work in those places?
Absolutely. So in the United States, 85% of EV drivers charge at home, meaning they come home after their day, they pull into their garage or driveway, and they plug in, same way that we all do with our phones. But if you live in a city, you're not able to do that. People who have cars in cities are not people that are living in Midtown Manhattan. They're living in the areas where there's transit deserts, where there's not a ton of public transportation. And they rely on their vehicles. They put on more vehicle miles traveled than any other driver. So what we need to do is we need to put charging where people are. We need to meet them on the streets. So similar to what you've seen in the UK and in Europe and the Nordics, curbside charging is everywhere except in the United States. And the reason for that is that we don't have the right infrastructure in terms of where our utility feeds can allow us to put that charging in. So what It's Electric does says that it's actually not the utility that's the infrastructure, it's the buildings that are the infrastructure. So we use spare energy from any building to power a public charger, and then we revenue share back to that building to help creep up adoption in neighborhoods that previously would not want this type of infrastructure to come in.
I see. And Umar, I really want to hear from you because you deal with heavy-duty vehicles, and we know that heavy-duty vehicles are contributing the vast majority of emissions, certainly in the US, where I'm from. And so the transition of that sector is critically important. What are you doing in that space?
Thank you. So we started WattEV about 5 years ago. Our focus from get-go was focus on heavy-duty transportation. In California, we looked at the entire state, strategically identified locations, depots, where we wanted to build large charging stations, call them like a truck stops. Each site has about 30 plus charging cords, and they are up to 350 kilowatt rate today. Sites that we're building today, they have 1.2 megawatt capability, but there aren't that many trucks out there. Tesla claims to have their production units available in 6 months from now. But so far we have built 6 sites They are up and running, operational in California, one at Port of Long Beach, Port of LA, and covers about 2/3 of the state today. At the same time, we have about 100 electric trucks that are operational, and we are doing about 100 to 120,000 miles per week out of those trucks. So what we have proven over the last 3-4 years time frame that this is possible, the TCO is achievable, and large brand names likes of Procter & Gamble or IKEAs or Amazons and so forth, they are now trusting that this model works. The only big change that we're expecting is 500-mile plus range trucks. If Tesla delivers them in timely fashion, or other OEMs likes of Volvos or Daimlers and so forth, if they come up with those trucks in a timely fashion, I think this will take off very quickly.
I see. Well, speaking of Tesla, Michael, this is not your first time around in the electrification space, but you are doing some interesting new things. So can you talk maybe a little bit about your past experience in deploying charging infrastructure, but what you're doing now also?
Yeah, so I started my career in emerging markets. I was pulled back to the US for a job in the senior leadership team at Tesla in 2018. I joined when I thought it was going to be a 6 or 8 month job before they went bankrupt, and got to, in hindsight, be part of the probably most transformative part of the company's growth when we went from just having finished design of the Model 3, scaling that, then scaling Model Y. And I worked there across both vehicle manufacturing as well as supercharging deployment and destination charging deployment, as well as Tesla Energy. So I worked across all kind of 4 key parts of the ecosystem: vehicles, charging, batteries, and solar. And did a lot of hard things. I'm by nature a relatively lazy person, and asked myself as I was leaving Tesla where from a physics perspective, easiest vehicles are to electrify in terms of the right speed, low mass, high utilization, and then where the greatest gains or greatest value creating opportunity is for consumers, on the belief that if it's easy physics and big gains for the consumer, you're going to be able to get traction the fastest. And so what we're building at Zeno is a emerging market focused light mobility ecosystem. So that's primarily motorbikes and 3-wheelers. There's around 1 billion 2-wheelers and 3-wheelers on the planet today. They're responsible for 7 to 8% of global greenhouse gas emissions, so in that same kind of range as the aviation industry. And we have developed our own vehicles, so OEM, kind of ground-up development OEM, as well as what we call multimodal charging ecosystem. So the key things that we are doing there is, first, our batteries are treated as a separate commercial asset to the vehicle, so they're accessed on a battery as a service basis. The core thing there is, if we think about the EV transition, historically you have a very small, cheap sheet metal fuel tank, a $5 or $6 sheet metal fuel tank on a petrol vehicle, and that sheet metal fuel tank will facilitate the use of sometimes $40,000 or $50,000 of fuel over that vehicle's lifespan. We're taking that cheap sheet metal fuel tank, replacing it with a more expensive fuel tank in the form of a battery that's going to facilitate 10 or 11,000, so orders of magnitude less expensive energy, and we're figuring out how to amortize those battery assets over time. So we have 2-wheelers and 3-wheelers, that electric 2-wheelers and 3-wheelers that on all key metrics perform better than their petrol equivalents, petrol or diesel equivalents. Customers can purchase them for 7 to 15% less than petrol equivalents, and then they operate total cost of ownership at between 25 to 70% less. And so our value proposition is a better vehicle that's more affordable to purchase at half the cost to own and operate. And we're expanding across East Africa today. We're live in 4 cities, 125 charge points, and gross margin positive pre-Series A, which is a pretty big achievement for an EV OEM or charge point operator globally.
That's interesting. So I want to talk a little bit about affordability, because we know there's vast income disparities across the globe. Currently, EVs are some of the most expensive vehicles that you can procure. And so we run the risk of really exacerbating mobility inequities, mobility deserts, if we don't do this right. So how are we going to make sure that this transition to electric vehicles is one that is attainable by people of all income levels? So whether it's through private mobility or shared mobility, how are we going to really make sure that everyone benefits from this transition? Bouba, maybe you can start.
That's a great question because I think in Africa alone, we have the youngest population in the world. And what we realized is when we went to Rwanda, most of the taxi drivers, they don't have access to getting a new car. So what you realize is most African countries, they have these taxis that are 20 to 25 years old. They have high pollution. So what you're working on is very amazing because if you can save these drivers almost 70% as far as just cost, that means they have more money to take home. And that's how we can curve the poverty cycle. Because then we have people that can have more money they can take home to support their families, and they can send them to better schools. But then also they can contribute in the general economy as far as reducing carbon emission, and now everybody can breathe in the cleaner air. But those people that don't have access to a car because they cannot afford a car that costs, let's say, between $15,000 to $30,000, at least they can afford a shared mobility that can cost them somewhere close to $5 at the highest level. So our goal is to make it affordable for everyone to have access. That way, depending on your economic level, anytime you visit Africa or any third world countries or anywhere in the world, you can access to a shared mobility at an affordable cost, but also you can move freely and sustainably.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Michael, do you want to add to that? Because obviously these mini mobility, micro mobility options are a much lower price point, right, than a full size, full speed
Absolutely.
vehicle. So what is your theory of change here?
So I think one of the key starting points for me was understanding that EVs at a physics level are dramatically more affordable to operate than petrol or diesel vehicles. But it is not particularly noticeable unless it's a heavy utilized asset. And so when you have a Model 3 owner in the US who might drive 20, 30 kilometers a day, and previously their fuel was maybe 3 to 4% of their overall income, a savings of 20 or 30% on fuel was relatively negligible in their overall pocketbook kind of experience. But when you look at high utilization vehicles, so African market, a lot of South Asian market, you have 90 to 95% of all two-wheelers are commercial use vehicles. So they're driving 150, in some cases up to 350, 400 kilometers a day. And so when you have an asset that's being utilized so aggressively, the benefits can accrue, the physics benefits of a more efficient use of energy accrue much faster. And so the irony or the paradox in some ways is that EVs are actually in our markets reducing the cost of moving from point A to point B by 30 to 50%. And so it's actually reducing mobility inequity, increasing access to transportation in a way that's quite transformative.
That's interesting. So if I can paraphrase a little bit, you're suggesting if we can lower the cost for the commercial uses, the commercial delivery uses, that also can then yield additional savings to those households in the same way Bouba was talking about shared mobility. Tiya, I know you're doing a lot of work in this affordability space.
Yeah, so in a city like New York, time is money, without doubt. And so Uber came in to co-lead our last round because of the fact that Uber drivers in a city like New York are actually losing income in the time that it's taking them to go out to find a charger, to wait in those queues for the limited amount of fast charging that exists in a city like New York, and then to get back into their routes. They're actually losing around 30% of their weekly revenue in the time that it's taking them to charge. So by It's Electric placing chargers on the blocks where Uber drivers live in neighborhoods like Jackson Heights, Queens, or Astoria, or Flatbush, or Crown Heights, we're actually giving more money into their pockets by giving them more time back to actually earn while they're driving. All of the studies have shown, all the roundtables have shown that actually Uber drivers can complete their shifts from one single level 2 overnight charge. They actually don't need to re-up during the day. So to be able to give them that power to be able to drive their full shifts without having to stop to charge is a game changer.
I want to pivot the discussion a little bit to the grid and to energy provision and how we balance. We're in a moment when artificial intelligence is really demanding a lot from the grid. Now we're going to electrify an innumerable quantity of transportation vehicles. Meshal, I want to start with you. How is Saudi Arabia thinking about this provision of the grid and the energy to sustain this dramatic transformation that is possible in the kingdom?
Thank you. This is an interesting, actually, area where we should tackle on it because the government right now realize that we are using almost 1/3 of the oil consumption in Saudi. So we have to reduce our oil dependency inside the government. So they launch many initiatives. This is where will answer the second question you said, and this question that national plan, the government launched to invest $50 billion into this sector by initiating or developing a new EV manufacturing here in Saudi Arabia, like SEER, which is owned by the PIF, plus having some contribution with the Lucid motor, where we can have more contribution on this field and implemented here in the government. Plus, they were planning to deploy around 5,000 charging stations around the kingdom by 2030. This is where they initiate a company called EVIC, which is owned by the PIF and the electricity company, Saudi Electricity Company, into 1,000 sites. This is where we can promote and where we can have such a system or new system in our current system around the kingdom. So this is aligned with many other initiatives that government is looking for, like the Saudi Green Initiative and other initiatives that the government keep it as one of Saudi 2030 vision, like reducing the CO2 emission by 278 billion tons by a year by 2030. This is one of the initiatives and the goals that the government are doing right now to make sure they are doing the right thing on this field. Very good.
For the climate improvements, I mean, that's a critical move now.
It is, yeah. This is why they are targeting and maybe if somebody here from the SEER manufacturing, they are enforcing this work and keeping on a track and all the plan where the SEER company is there. We can see Lucid right now. It is operated every through the regulation in the government, and how they are trying to adding the electric vehicle to make sure that they are targeting or they are delivering the goals or the objectives of Vision 2030 by changing the regulations and doing some incentives for those companies to make sure they deliver their goals there.
That's fantastic. Umar, I want you to maybe comment a little bit. So transitioning freight hubs, transitioning ports to electric vehicles, we're talking about very heavy duty, large fleets. They can have electricity draws not dissimilar to a small city,
right,
just to power those depots. So how do we ensure that the power is there, and can they be repositories of power to give back in the off periods?
Very good question. So two things here. 3 years back, our 3 main sites in California, we ran into the exact same issue. We thought we could go get a land anywhere we wish and call electricity company, utility company, and you will have power tomorrow. That's not how it works.
Nope.
You call them up and they tell you, sure, you'll get it, see you in 3 years. That's not how it works. So we pivoted right away. The site selection is very important. Coordination with utilities is very important. And then the long lead items, such as transformers and so forth, to upgrade the grid infrastructure is very important. So we learned that upfront very, very quickly. And in Port of Long Beach, which is one of the most busiest port in the world, it took us less than 9 months. We worked closely with utility and we got 12 megawatt power at that site. In Bakersfield, which is a different utility company, as a comparison, that site needed 25 megawatt. They gave us just 1 megawatt grid connection. We supplemented 10 megawatt initially with our own solar farm co-located. So we learned that 3 years back. Right now we have more than a dozen sites under construction in California, and we worked very closely with utility. I think it's a new thing for them as well, fairness to them. All of a sudden, the whole world wants EV connections, and you need to work closely with them There's an education, there's a learning process. That's in U.S. market because we have so many utility companies. Like Kingdom here, I guess it's much easier, it's more uniform. That's my understanding. I think a grand strategy, if it's in place, everybody can work together and make sure that when you need power, where you need power in a timely fashion, you get it.
I want to pick up that thread of partnership and what partnerships you need to make sure that this transition really works. We're talking about accelerating things, moving faster than we typically do. Things are simple and straightforward and easy to do in the US, right, Tiya?
So easy.
So what kind of partnerships are critical for It's Electric and for the deployments that you're trying to really scale?
Yeah, I mean, I'll weave together that question with the previous question in regards to requirements of the grid and resiliency of the grid. So as you're trying to build these specific locations that can hold this amount of power, what we need to think about is every electric vehicle battery is effectively a wallet of energy that can be moved around the city, and that is a wallet that can turn into currency, where that money, that energy in the battery can be pushed back into the grid. So we're actually working with the California Energy Commission to use our same exact footprint of our very small, very stylish charger that sits on curbside and to make these bidirectional. So just some quick numbers. In California alone, there's 7.5 million EVs on the road. There'll be 1.5 of those that are just parked on the street, meaning they don't have a garage or driveway. If you take all of those batteries together, collectively, that's around 100 gigawatt hours of power that can power 18,000 homes. So you have this power play, this little army of batteries that can be moved anywhere in a city that's needed. And then the benefit is that the owners of those cars can then push the energy back into the grid at payment to them. So it's about finding the partnerships that actually benefit those utilities, those same people that are perhaps needing or making it a little bit harder for you, you can make it easier for them by creating a two-way stream in terms of energy demand and not just always be asking for the energy to be delivered to the site, but to be able to give it back to them when they need it as well.
And as we're talking about partnerships, we know it's not everywhere that you can actually sell power back to the grid. So there's some changes, some regulatory changes that are necessary there.
Yeah.
Bouba, can you talk about some of the critical partnerships that you've found as you've gone to scale with?
I think some of the biggest partnerships so far we got is just support, as far as like government support. Because Rwanda is one of the most innovative countries in Africa. They have an excellent leader, and they make business very friendly. So policies is very important. So having zero tariffs on electric vehicles truly accelerated the growth for us, because that gives us the confidence with limited resources to go buy more cars. So I think those are the incentives that we need as far as regulations and facility, just making sure that we have good partnerships, especially with large institutional financing for banks, because most African drivers, they are not bankable by themselves. But people need to give them the opportunity to bet on them, because if you don't, by 2050, the whole world will be needing Africa, because we have the natural resources already in Africa to build those batteries, to build those charging stations. But I think some of the partnership we need is bringing manufacturing in Africa, being able to make these vehicles made in Africa and being able to supply the world with those vehicles as well. So those are the partnership we're looking for.
That's fantastic. These panels always seem to go faster than we would like them to. So maybe I'd like, starting with Michael, and then we'll move our way back down the line, is if the challenge here is to really move toward a zero-emission future, where we're really going to achieve at scale electrification, decarbonization of the transportation space, what is the one thing, if you could only focus on one thing in your respective countries or regions, that really needs to be looked at with a laser focus? What would you have us focus on?
Yeah, I think the first thing, and I think it applies across markets and not just in particular markets, is that you have to have the desire to do it. So I think the challenging thing with EVs is that we're competing against a sunk cost existing infrastructure that on an OpEx basis is quite high, but it's sunk cost, so we're not factoring in that additional investment. At a physics level, first principles physics level, mobility ecosystem primarily rooted in electrification is more affordable to operate, but there is a hurdle that has to be jumped across, which is we're going to have to go and invest a lot of capex, a lot of infrastructure to get us from where we are today, where we're sitting up at this kind of, if we just look at kind of global mobility OpEx sitting up here with the utilization of an existing sunk cost infrastructure here. We have to make this investment infrastructure here, and that will then bring our OpEx for mobility down dramatically. And so there's two things that have to happen there. You have to have consistent, almost kind of species level desire to get over that hurdle and get to that new ecosystem of more affordable existence and cost of capital. And so when you were taking and deploying infrastructure or financing, to use my battery fuel tank metaphor, financing more expensive but more affordable to operate assets, you need to have lower cost. You have to have affordable debt. And I think one of the big challenges that we have definitely in African and emerging markets is a dearth of affordable capital. So the one silver bullet that I would ask for right now is, I'm not talking about unrealistic, but I'm talking about like unlimited 15% interest rate money. And if I had unlimited 15% interest rate money, we could, that gets us over that capital infrastructure hurdle. Or, and it's been spoken about at COP as well, is debt that is priced in a central bank manner or in a kind of third-party manner, debt for green transition that is priced at lower rates than market rates. So the biggest thing that hurt, really, I'd say the whole EV transition, and particularly the charge point infrastructure ecosystem, was when we went from 2021 2%, 3% interest rates to 7, 8% interest rates today. And that changes your unit economics and changes your payback period, your amortization, depreciation on anything that you're financing over more than 6 months.
So your focus is on financing. Umar, where are you going to call for the focus to be?
So for heavy-duty side, where we're focused on right now, obsolescence. We want to make sure that we are investing. We want to continue investing what exists today as technology, but we want to keep an eye on where we want to be. And in our world, we want to be at 1.2 megawatt charging rate to charge these big rigs under 25 minutes. That not 2.5 hours, what is today, but we need to do 2.5 hours to nurture the market, train the world that no, this thing works. But obsolescence is very important to us. We want to make sure our investments, our infrastructure is built as such that tomorrow it's easy swap to get to 1.2 megawatt.
Okay.
So finance, obsolescence, my word is ease. And basically just make everything that previously was the right thing to do no longer really matters. It's about making it the easy thing to do for consumers, and just to give it that to them and just hand it right there. And then it's a no-brainer after that.
Just seamless ability to access it. Bouba, where are you going to put your focus?
I'll go back to that one, accessibility. I think that's the biggest opportunity we have in Africa, and also believing in Africa. Like Africa is open for business, and we want the world to collaborate with Africa because we can create win-win situations for Africa and the rest of the world.
So, Professor, you probably have the best opportunity to move with the greatest acceleration. Where are you going to call for the focus to be to find this new future?
Actually, I would do the urban design to make it integrated with the systems they are developing right now, because bringing in new technology, new things to current system, it would be hard right now. So as Michael mentioned, the price, we know that the price should be going down a little bit because it's not affordable that everybody can get the EV. So the urban design, this is number one, where I can be integrated with Tiya product, Umar product, and Bouba product. So everybody need to have a great urban design, plus bringing down the prices a little bit, even resale and the battery, if the battery is dead, because it is not gonna last for long. But the prices, if you want to get a new battery for used vehicle, sometimes it reach higher than the price of the used vehicle over there. So bringing down those technology by advancing and advancing the technology of the electric batteries.
I think that's a perfect conclusion for this, because what Commotion is really about, it's about building the cities of the future, using technology and being really cognizant of mobility and uniting all of those things together. So I think that that's what you're saying is where Saudi Arabia will really lead. So I want to thank this amazing panel. This has been a really great discussion. I would go for hours more, but we can't. They gave us a time limit. So please give a round of applause for our panel.
Thank you.
Thank you.